aviation, rail, trails, all kinds of different things, in addition to streets, roads, and highways. And we heard a presentation where Jimmy and I were in attendance. Dion was there when Richard gave a presentation in Raleigh about a few weeks ago, and they agreed to come up as a part of this meeting and talk with you all about how the process works and how the airports fit in, and talk a little bit about economic development and the role of airports. And I'll kind of turn it over to you all, however you want to do it, Richard. And Richard, I really just want to introduce our Board of Commissioners and serve the airport board. And Bill, if you could here.
Bill Eckler, Chairman. Greg Loveless, Vice Chair. Eddie Holland and Julius Owens.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for the warm welcome.
Let you guys kind of how you want to proceed. Jimmy's on hold until while you all make your presentation, and then we can drop back in and talk about individual projects maybe after you all.
Okay, well, let me just, I'll kick it off, and Bobby's going to do the presentation, but he's going to talk about the new legislation that was passed and signed by the governor called the Strategic Transportation Initiative. It's going to change how we've been doing funding inside the state for all transportation projects. It's not just for aviation, but like you said, planes, trains, highways, buses, the ferry system, bikes, pedestrian walkways, and so forth. And the idea is to get projects to compete against each other. And so that we're picking the best projects of the state regardless of mode. And so there's different ways that it's been set up through the legislation. It doesn't start till 2015, but the legislation has a very tight schedule, and you have to begin the process today to begin to pick your projects and so forth. So with that, Bobby's got a lot of details on the process and what aviation needs to do to be successful in the new program.
All right, thank you for having us. We're just booting up here. Apologize, we're walking in on you folks a little bit late. We flew in and got routed around Charlotte air traffic, so this will be up here just a second. Sorry, I missed the first presentation. So if there's anything else on the agenda, perhaps just a couple minutes. This will be up here in just a moment.
Mr. Chairman, part of the discussion today is about economic development also, and how the airport really falls into that role. And one of the things that the former airport board had initiated, and something we'll be continuing expanding upon, is leveraging the asset of the airport for economic development in Rutherford. When the airport was begun, as you may recall, probably far better than me, but doing the background review of the airport that I had done for you, it started actually as the industrial airport, and it was geared towards serving those businesses that were here in the 1970s. It was used to some extent, as I understand it, by the textile industries and others in the area, and as they moved out, it became much more of a standard general aviation airport. We've got a couple businesses out here now, but what we're trying to leverage is the airport in about 3 different ways. One is we want to continue to expand on-field businesses, whether it's CAMs or plane works, people who need to be on the field and provide services either directly to the planes that are here or to aircraft elsewhere, but they need to be on the field to be able to service those aircraft. They're either brought in or they go get them. Or it can be such as CAMs, where they're actually dealing with aircraft and selling them, and they need to be on the field. Second group we're looking at is those that are aviation related. These are firms that don't necessarily be on the airport per se, but to be in and near the airport. And those we're working on and discussing with the strategic economic development plan that was done in the spring, and working with Matt Blackwell on that, our economic development director, for the benefit of those who don't know who our economic development director is. The third area, and this is kind of the most unusual in a way, this is what the airport board was really working on, and that is, how do we leverage the airport for a combination of, if you think of economic development, we have industrial development, and then tourism. Both of those are elements of economic development. How do we leverage the airport to build both of those? And part of the idea that we're talking about was utilizing the strategic economic development plan that was adopted last spring and going after those target industries, and then at the same time utilizing our tourism assets to encourage them to come here, visit as tourists, if you will, but at the same time introduce them to the industrial aspects of availability in Rutherford County. And that's kind of the third and biggest area we're looking at. And so my discussions with Jimmy have been related upon, and part of this relates to this discussion today, is how do we submit projects, I believe they'll be telling us about November 1, into the new plan so that it enhances the airport to serve economic development. So that's been the focus we as staff have had over the, as we've been working on and working with the airport. So that's kind of the lead-in to maybe Bobby's comments as you're thinking about it, what are the projects that we should be submitting that are priority projects that are fundable, but at the same time are the ones that you feel have the biggest bang for generating economic development in Rutherford County and frankly within our region, because we do serve the region here. How did I do, Bobby?
Fantastic.
All right, leave the segue.
Would you like to finish this?
No, I can only go that far. So
Okay, fine. Thank you, Carl. Good to see you again. And so I have a few slides here, and I commend you for jumping on this early. You're one of our earlier airports that are trying to digest and consume this. This has been a whirlwind for us over the last several months as we look to take this legislation and implement it. So as mentioned here, this is prioritization 3.0, a new way of doing things at DOT. It has been approved by the Board of Transportation, and as required in the law, has been presented back or brought back to the General Assembly for final approval. Aviation, this is what we're about, this is what we do. Division of Aviation is one of many divisions under the big umbrella of DOT. Most people think a division of highways when they think of DOT, but there are several other modes that we get involved with, such as rail and public transportation, the ferry division out on our coast, as well as airports and aviation. So we're proud of what we offer in the system of public airports that we have in North Carolina. I'll quickly talk about in terms of eligible items that we're really talking about. As far as this funding and the type projects that are eligible, this is applying to capital improvement funds. It's called the Highway Trust Fund, and so we quickly had to make very clear what type projects are eligible for these type funds. And so that's what we've attempted to show here is what are we really talking about. Capital projects that are eligible for this fund are land acquisition, major pavement expansions, so runway extensions, new parallel taxiways, apron and parking ramp expansions, and I might add too, I'm happy to provide these slides, so if anybody's trying to capture all this, I'll be happy to share the slides. So, and then new airfield equipment such as instrument landing systems, or new lighting systems, things of that nature. So major, kind of think new projects on your airfield, and certainly a new airport, if that's to be considered, would be for capital projects. So the way the law is set up, and I'll back up just a little bit. I don't have the slides I'm showing you now, but I will mention that this is the biggest. This new law is the biggest law that has been passed affecting DOT since 1989. So it's a major revision and change to the way we do business at DOT. So it gets into basically taking all transportation modes and applying funds, this Highway Trust Fund money. It revises how these monies are applied to projects statewide. And so one of the first things it does is it basically sets up all of our transportation components into three different buckets, if you will. Statewide, regional, and division. And again, my focus in this briefing is on airports and aviation. So this was the definition. This is directly out of the law in terms of how they describe these airports. So you think of statewide mobility. On a highway side, you think of interstates, things that have interstate access and really passing through our state, but providing tremendous transportation. Well, for airports, these are our large commercial service airports. So you're thinking Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, certain Greensboro, Piedmont Triad, and Wilmington International are the 4 airports that are covered in here. So this legislation states that you're capped, those airports are capped at $500,000 per year of state funds. And we're talking, again, just state funds on this, $500,000 per airport per year. They've got to be recognized by FAA as, in the national plan for FAA. They have to have international service or at least 375,000 enplanements or greater. The next group is regional impact, so that's commercial service airports that are not in the statewide. So this is our remaining 5 airports. You can see them listed here: Asheville, Albert J, which is down in Jacksonville, Coastal Carolina, and New Bern, Pitt, Greenville, and then Fayetteville Regional. Those airports are capped at $300,000 per airport per project per year. So again, that's the caveat there. So finally, and last and most important to you all would be the division needs, and that's essentially what we call general aviation airports. There are 63 of those airports in our state, and the legislation states basically there that the total amount of state funds for all 63 of those airports are not to exceed $18.5 million. So that's the cap, if you will, that was spelled out there. I don't know if you can see that very well in the back, but here's our system of airports. As I mentioned, is a very robust system. So the red dots are the general aviation airports, which you guys are right here, and then you can see the statewide and regional airports. So quite a few general aviation airports, and that's what we're really focused in on to talk with you all about today. So what we were tasked in the bill is to put together quantitative criteria to rate projects, and I'll step you through that very briefly, and I'll be happy to take any questions. The legislation spells out, and really the intent here, think about it this way: statewide, regional, and division. Statewide type projects, again, those big airports, for example, DOT will control 100% of scoring those projects and selecting those projects. Again, they're based on this criteria that we've established and set up. For regional impact, again, the 5 commercial service airports. For highways, I'm trying to help you kind of quantify this in your mind, is NC and US routes for highways. DOT is going to have 70% of the points in that. All projects will be scored on a scale from 1 to 100. And I mean highways, ferries, rail projects, they'll all be scaled or scored on a scale of 1 to 100. Well, DOT will score those projects in the regional impact up to 70 points. You might ask, where do the other 30 points come from? Well, this is where the local areas will really have their involvement. They will score, or you all will score 30%, have input for 30% of the points. But again, let's focus on division needs because that's where your airport falls. General aviation airports, DOT will put 50% points, possible up to 50% points on any project that you request. The other 50% of points, or 50 points, would come from 25% or 25 points from your MPO or RPO, so your regional planning area, and 25 points from your division, your highway division that you're in, and your division engineer. Carl.
Bobby, is that I've been reading some stuff in the paper recently about, Representative Braxley or Senator Braxley or someone Raleigh, wrote something about in the paper. Is this the issue that they're talking about, is this 25-25 issue?
Right, right. And again, the intent there is to put more on these regional and division need type projects. And here we're talking about, SR routes within your county, having more local input, because the point here, I guess, or one of the major points is there's not enough funds here to cover all projects. So what this is doing is giving local input to buy in and help to evaluate, and you tell the department what's your priority. What is the priority of the county or the division or the region? And so that's the way this will work for airports as well, like all modes.
Mr. Chairman, for the purposes of the board, as you're aware, today we received a survey from NCDOT because I think in response to the controversy, DOT has sent out a survey to all the county managers asking us, and I'll be forwarding it on to you probably tomorrow, getting your input on how do you feel about that issue and this split between NCDOT and the RPOs about that 50%? I'm not sure, they're not saying what they're gonna do, but they are seeking local input because there's a split between NCDOT, what they thought was the intent of the law, and I think what some of the legislators thought was the intent of the law,